Last but not least, we have the privilege of hearing from Mr. Julio Bacio Terracino, Head of the Public Integrity Division at OECD, who will offer his thoughts on enhancing public integrity and countering undue influence.
So yes, just before the coffee. So first of all, Mr. Sumi, Monsieur Migaud, Delia, Marin, colleagues, friends, some of you, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for joining this conference today in Ljubljana. It's my first time in Ljubljana. I like to thank the European Conference. I like to thank the European Network for the Public Ethics and Commission for the Prevention of Corruption of the Republic of Slovenia for the invitation. You may be wondering, what is the OECD? The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development is an international organization that works to build better public policies for better lives. This is our motto. Together with governments, policymakers, and citizens, we work on establishing evidence-based international standards and finding solutions to a range of social, economic, and environmental challenges. From improving economic performance and creating jobs, to fostering strong education and fighting international tax evasion, we provide a unique forum and knowledge hub for data and analysis, best practice sharing, and advice on public policies and international standard setting. One of our areas of work is anti-corruption and integrity, because, as I'm sure you will agree, there can be no economic and social prosperity without integrity. When there is corruption, the government delivers the wrong policies. It is as simple as that. Or let me rephrase something similar that Delia has said. When there is corruption, the government delivers the right policies to a very selective group of people and the wrong policies to the rest. This means poor health, bad education, weak economy, high criminality, etc., etc. No wonder we see record low levels of trust in government in many countries. In 2022, at the OECD, we conducted a survey on trust among 22 OECD countries, and almost half of the respondents believed that politicians in their country were corrupt. Let me repeat, half of the population in 22 OECD countries believe that their politicians are corrupt. This is alarming, especially when combined with other data that we have collected at the OECD through the public integrity indicators. So allow me to share with you some of these data. Within the broad area of anti-corruption and public integrity, I would like to focus today on one key issue, which is the way different interests influence the government. At the end of the day, this is at the core of citizens' discontent and lack of trust. Those that represent us in government, who do they really represent? As also Delia mentioned before. Those that influence and lobby government still have privileged access in many countries. And to make things worse, there is a greater range of actors seeking to influence policymaking through a range of vehicles, including trade and industry associations, NGOs, advisory and expert groups, parliamentary liaison groups, academic institutions, and even think tanks. There is little transparency on the way these actors interact and influence the government. And only 12 OECD countries have established an authority, an entity, a body, to oversee these issues, transparency and integrity in lobbying and influence. One key way of influencing the government is through the financing of political campaigns. But less than half of OECD countries ban anonymous contributions to political parties or contributions from foreign actors. So while we can all agree that donations to political campaigns and political parties are a healthy expression of democracy, but when these are anonymous, there is no way to know who is behind a candidate or supporting a political party. Not getting the rules right on political finance can skew the democratic process towards the select few, leave countries vulnerable to foreign interference, and harm the public interest. Another area of high concern is conflict of interests. When there is a conflict between the public duty and the private interests of a public official, in which the public official has a private or personal interests which could improperly influence the performance of his or her duties. While most OECD countries have strong conflict of interest regulations which define incompatibilities, the circumstances and relationships that can lead to a conflict of interest situation and provide institutional responses, the rules are not always implemented. For example, more than half of OECD countries that require members of parliament to submit interest declarations do not track whether they do, in fact, submit these declarations. And in many countries, indeed, nobody's checking. And moreover, most OECD countries are not actually those that do track whether they are submitted. They then do not verify these interest declarations. Only 12 OECD countries had verified at least 60% of the declarations made in the previous 2 years. Another example, only 9 OECD countries collect data on the frequency in which ministers leave government to work in a company in the same field of his or her portfolio. So even if there are rules, you may know the cooling off period rules, sometimes there's no tracking of whether this is respected. And I invite you actually to look at the OECD data online, in which you can, in some countries, you can even see which ministers have gone to the companies that belong to their portfolio before. But I feel I'm giving you a headache here with all these data, numbers, and percentages, so I will not continue. You can find much more of this online in the OECD Public Integrity Indicators portal. All this data is down. You can download it and use it for your own work and your own research. But not everything is bad news. We do see a lot of action and a momentum that we have never seen before. The OECD indicators show that 79% of OECD countries currently have a strategic framework or a strategy on public integrity. And I believe Slovenia is soon to join this already high percentage of countries. So more and having this strategic approach to anti-corruption and to reinforcing public integrity. A strategy for public integrity is essential for supporting a coherent and comprehensive integrity system. And this is a positive development and shows that governments are increasingly thinking in a holistic way, bringing all key actors in government in a more coordinated approach to fight corruption and strengthen integrity. Another positive development is the rise of technology and data analytics as a powerful tool to carry out many of the integrity functions, but much faster and better than ever before. At the OECD, we support our communities of anti-corruption and oversight bodies, like yourselves, to advance their digital strategies and strengthen their use of technology, data, and analytics, mainly in 3 ways. First, advancing the digital reforms within anti-corruption and oversight bodies to ensure a high-functioning data ecosystem. Also co-creating tools and advanced risk models for uncovering risks of corruption in specific areas, including public procurement, infrastructure, and public grants. And by building networks and learning opportunities, including a community of practice for policymakers and practitioners, which is focused on technologies and analytics for public integrity. So, for example, we know, and we're working with the Tribunal de Contas, this is the accounts tribunal, if the right translation perhaps, of Portugal, the Supreme Audit Institution of Portugal, in advancing its digital transformation strategy and developing a data-driven risk model for assessing irregularities in public procurement. Or the Federal Internal Audit of Belgium is incorporating data analytics and including artificial intelligence into the risk assessment processes. So we have a more strategic approach, we have new technologies, But the most important good news of all is the renewed commitment from many actors, from governments, from business and civil society. At the end of the day, this is why we are all here today. It's people like you, like us, who are really making change happen. And the stakes, I think, couldn't be higher. What is at stake here is much more than a bribe and a public contract that went to the wrong hands. Last year, the OECD launched the Reinforcing Democracy Initiative to support countries in strengthening trust in government and reinforce democracy. And our work on anti-corruption and integrity is a fundamental part of this initiative. It includes promoting integrity in democratic institutions and amongst elected officials, in particular by strengthening government integrity systems and increasing the transparency of political parties and election campaigns. This work will continue to be informed by our standards on public integrity, by our own work, as well as the indicators I mentioned earlier. But OECD countries have also prioritized strengthening democratic resilience to foreign interference and undue influence from abroad. So integrity risks are magnified when foreign governments, particularly non-democratic regimes, aim to destabilize democracies. Disinformation campaigns, malign political financing, and interference in domestic policymaking through covert lobbying practices can all contribute to weakening social cohesion. By spurring perceptions that democracies are dysfunctional, that democracies are corrupt and untrustworthy, malign foreign actors can set the stage for increased support for non-democratic forms of government. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Scientific cooperation, diasporas, education, universities, culture, think tanks, civil society organizations, corporations, these are some of the areas and actors that have become easy targets for foreign covert influence operations. And this is, of course, very worrying, especially if globally the number of countries classified as democracies is diminishing. 70% of the global population, that's 5.4 billion people, now live in closed or electoral autocracies. So only 30% of the global population live under democracy. This is why OECD countries committed to building resilience to foreign interference as part of their public integrity efforts. This effort will require a whole-of-government approach to improve our understanding of the institutional architecture of foreign interference activities and how to strengthen our response across a range of measures that autocratic states use to interfere in democratic processes. And one of the pioneers in this field is the French High Authority for Transparency in Public Life, who are here today, and it was mentioned earlier, who are already working with us to strengthen the institutional legislative framework on foreign influence. So the stakes are indeed high. Democracies aim to represent and safeguard the public interest. Democratic governance has proved to be the best institutional system for protecting and promoting individual rights and freedoms, while allowing long-term sustainable gains and well-being. Your work in strengthening anti-corruption and integrity systems directly contributes to this, no more and no less. You're not alone. You have a network of partners, and even here and beyond, I dare say, supporting each other to fight the good fight, and you can definitely count on the OECD for support as well. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Terracino. We fully agree with you and OECD that integrity is one of the pillars of political, economic and social structures, and thus essential to economic and social well-being and prosperity of individuals and societies as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, before we commence, it is now the perfect moment to enjoy a rejuvenating coffee break. Coffee and refreshments are awaiting you in the foyer, one floor below. This break not only provides for an excellent chance for networking, exchanging ideas and capturing memorable moments through photos and press statements, but also serves as a delightful refreshment before we continue with our panel discussion. I welcome you back at 11:30.